Hey everyone, welcome to Texas Legal Research, an elective module in the Excellence in Legal Research program. Today we're going to be going over specific resources for Texas legal research, as well as just really brief overview of codified law and case law research. And then we'll do a brief in-class demonstration of some of these resources, how to access them, and then the in-class exercise. So as a reminder, you always want to start your research with an issue analysis. And the more you do this, the more just habit it will become. And you'll be able to run through this who, what, when, where, why type of question really quickly. The reason why we emphasize doing this is that it helps set you up to be efficient in your research and to make sure that your research is comprehensive. So let's talk about some Texas-specific secondary sources. So secondary sources are really the best thing in the world because most of the research you're doing should not be novel research. There's probably someone out there who has already done the basic research for you, and that's what secondary sources are. And the fact is, every practicing lawyer uses secondary sources at some point in time. The great thing about secondary sources is that they explain or synthesize the law for you. They identify elements and factors. They identify the primary law, case law, statutes, regulations. They will also often provide you with the standard forms and checklists that you need to know about in practice. So let's talk about some specific Texas secondary sources. The first one is Texas Jurisprudence. This is a Westlaw publication and is available in Westlaw. It is an encyclopedia, so it just gives short synopses of legal issues. It does have a focus more on case law rather than discussing statutory information. It is also not updated as frequently as other secondary sources, so you want to double check the last updated date, and you can do that by clicking on that eye icon when you're in it in Westlaw. That icon will bring up information about the publication, including the last time it was updated. So just remember, if the updated date is like 6 months or a year ago, you want to make sure and go do research to identify any other cases or statutes or things like that that might have changed since it was last updated. The second one I want to talk about is the O'Connor series. This is also a Westlaw publication and available in Westlaw. There are multiple titles within the series. To see a full list of those titles, you can go to Westlaw, go to the Texas page, click on the secondary sources link, then go to the A to Z link and go to the O's, and you'll find all of the O'Connors listed there. As you can see just by the examples given here, O'Connors covers all of the major legal topic areas, and if there's something you're looking for, O'Connors will likely have something for you. The O'Connor series are updated annually, so again, check that icon for the last date it was updated, and then do subsequent case law statutory searches to see if anything has changed since it was last updated. And then the last one we're going to talk about is Dorsanio's Texas Litigation. This is a Lexis publication and is available in Lexis. It is a step-by-step guide that provides comprehensive collection of litigation forms and procedural guides. It also provides brief synopses and explanations, and it is updated quarterly. So all three of these secondary sources are going to be great in helping you identify the primary law for the issue, so the case law, the binding, the primary statutes, regulations, etc. Now, these aren't the only Texas secondary sources out there. If you go to our Texas Legal Research Materials Guide, you'll see a list there, and here's just some of them that you have access to here. And you can see there's many more to choose from for Texas secondary sources. So let's just talk about codified law research in Texas. Obviously, the Constitution, Westlaw, and Lexis is going to have that, and you can also find it on Texas government websites if you just do a Google search. The unannotated code, so that is just the statute language. There's nothing else with it. That's available on the Texas Legislature website. And then the annotated codes, which is what we're all primarily used to using, are available through Westlaw and Lexis. The Westlaw code is Vernon's annotated, so you might hear someone refer to it as Vernon's. That's what they mean. It's just the Westlaw publication. And then regulations. The Texas Administrative Code, again, is available through Westlaw and Lexis. The Texas Register, so this is the publication where proposed regulations and approved regulations are first published. And then the University of North Texas has an online archive of old Texas registers going back to 1976. So tips on finding statutes. So generally speaking, doing a keyword search to find statutes is the most inefficient and ineffective method for finding individual statute sections. One of the reasons why we start with secondary sources is that they will often give us the primary code sections that we need to be aware of. If you need to do original statutory research, the index is the easiest way to find individual code sections based on keyword, legal phrase, etc. The table of contents allows you to browse code sections very quickly, and it's also a really handy way to find those necessary code sections that you need to be aware of, such as definitions, because that section in a code title is going to define how you interpret all the other codes in that specific section. And again, the easiest way to find that is to use the table of contents. So let's just briefly talk about municipal law. Municipal law research can be a little bit difficult because municipal codes are not comprehensively collected by any database. So generally speaking, Westlaw doesn't collect municipal codes. I think they have one in their Texas collection, and I can't remember for which city it is. Lexis does a little bit better. They do have a collection of Texas municipal codes, which I have linked here on the PowerPoint. But again, it's not a comprehensive collection of all the county codes, all of the city codes, all of the town codes in Texas. There is a freely available website called MuniCode, which also has a collection of municipal codes. It is probably the best resource online for municipal codes. And the fact is that sometimes the code isn't going to be available anywhere online. In that case, you're just going to have to call that municipality's main office and ask them where you can access their code or ordinances or whatever it is that they call it. Okay, so sometimes you might need to do some legislative history research to understand the intent, or you just need to know the history of a specific statute or bill. And when you're doing legislative history research, the very first thing you need to do is understand the legislative process, because the legislative process defines the life of the bill and what materials are produced during the life of the bill. And though that body of materials, that is the legislative history. So if you don't know the Texas legislative process, we're in luck because the Texas Legislative Council has produced a really handy booklet on the process that provides a nice, concise synopsis and identifies the different stages where materials can be produced. Another guide that's really good to know about is the Legislative Reference Library of Texas Research Guide. So they basically discuss what is available and where you can access it. And then Texas Legislative Information and Resources page also has more information. And then Texas Legislature Online, that is the legislature's online portal for various types of legislative materials and documents. So Westlaw and Lexis, generally speaking, are not great places for legislative history research. There is some material available, but just be aware that if you don't find something in Westlaw or Lexis, it doesn't mean it's not out there. It just means that it's not in Westlaw or Lexis. Okay, so in Westlaw, this is what you have available to you as far as legislative history materials. You can access historical Texas statutes, historical enacted and proposed legislation. You can do bill tracking, and it does have a legislative history collection, but remember, again, these are not comprehensive, and they're kind of cherry-picked as well. In the annotations for different statute sections, you have the context and analysis tab, so that will link out to related material that might help you with legislative research for that specific section that you're looking at. And then you have the history tab, and that includes editors and revisers notes. These can be really helpful because it tells you what happened to the language in that specific code section, and was it changed, and if it was changed, where the change came from, what bill did that language come from. It also will provide you access to prior versions of that code section, as well as bill drafts and other sundry legislative history materials. In Lexis, you have bill tracking reports, you have legislative bill history, and you have the voting records. In the annotation, so again, those tabs up at the top of the page when you're in a code section, you have the history, so that lists the enacting legislation, the stuff that created that specific code section that you're in. Other citing resources identifies related codified law, and then it also has a compare versions function, so you can see how the language in that code section has changed over time. So regulatory history research, a little bit more simple than legislative history research, just because not a lot is produced during the life of a regulation. So again, you want to start out with an understanding of the regulatory process. So in Texas, you have the enabling statute or a constitutional provision that gives the state the ability to put in force regulations related to that particular statute or provision. That regulation is introduced, and when it's introduced, it is published in the Texas Register. And in that initial introduction, there'll be additional information, not just the text of the regulation itself, but contextual information that can be helpful. And then if the rule is adopted, it again is published in the Texas Register and then put into the Texas Administrative Code. If the rule is challenged, or if you need to check to see if it was challenged, you'll want to look at ALJ decisions or court rulings. So case law research. Again, we're all aware that we can do case law research in Westlaw and Lexis. A third database that you should be aware of is FastCase. So this is a low-cost subscription database. You have access to it here while you're at the law school through the law library, and I have it linked out here. When you pass the Texas Bar Association, you are also given access to FastCase through the Texas Bar Association. And a lot of local public law libraries will also make FastCase available to patrons. So again, if you need a low-cost database, it's kind of a stripped-down Westlaw and Lexis type of thing. FastCase is a good thing to be aware of. So case law research tips. So just like with statutory research, doing a keyword search is not the most efficient and effective method to find case law. Again, one of the reasons why we start with secondary sources is that we want somebody to have done the basic research for us, and the secondary sources are going to identify that primary case law for us. And then from there, we can expand out our search using headnotes, so finding cases with the same legal issue. We can use the key number system in Westlaw, so that's a topical system, or topics. In Lexis, it's literally just called topics. So these are basically indexes that allow you to find cases based on topic. So try to utilize these other functions before you resort to doing a keyword search for case law, because it's just not as efficient. Okay, so let's talk about the things that we just went through, and we'll look at how you navigate through the different databases to find these different materials. Okay, let's start with finding Texas secondary sources in Lexis. So if you already know the name of the thing you want to look for, you can just start typing the title into the main search box here, and it will bring up a drop-down list where you'll find the title, and then you can just click on it and it will go into the resource. If you just want to browse or you're not sure of the title, if you go to the state page and then go to Texas and then scroll down until you get to the secondary sources, you can click on all, and you can see here they've also kind of highlighted some of the different cases just right here from, resources just right here from the main page. But to see all of them, if you click on all Texas treatises, etc., then you can see we have this list of all of these different titles, and you can see there's quite a few different secondary sources available to you for Texas. The process is the same in Westlaw. Again, if you know the title of the thing that you're looking for, you can just start to type it up here, and it'll bring down a drop-down menu, and you can click to it through there. But again, if you want to browse or you're not sure of the name, just go to the state page and then click on, scroll down until you find secondary sources. You can see they've highlighted some here just from the front page. But if you click on all Texas secondary sources, you get an A to Z list in this case, and then you can browse through the list, or you can filter out like publication type over here, which can be helpful. Let's look at O'Connor so you just get an idea of how many titles are within that series. And you can see here it starts with these two, and then we've got another full page of different titles under O'Connor's, and you can see that there's probably something for you no matter what topic you're working in. So that's how you can browse to secondary sources in Westlaw and Lexis. So next, let's find our codified law. So that's our constitutions, our statutes, and our regulations. Again, if you know, well, actually for statutes, you don't really need to know the specific title of the publication. If you just start typing Texas statutes down here under the content pages here in Westlaw, you can just click on it and it will take you into the Texas statutes. It lands you on the table of contents here. So this is how you can browse through. If you click on one of these, it's going to take you into a subdivided list, and wherever you see a plus, that means that there's more subdivisions. So you just click on it until you get down to the individual code sections, and here you can see you can just start browsing through the individual code sections. This is a really simple way to find code sections based on topic or legal area like tax law, etc. Over here on the right hand side, so this is unique to Westlaw, you have this tools box, and here you have the index. So again, if you want to find specific code sections based on topic or issue or action. If you go to the index, it's so much easier to find individual code sections. So you can see it's just an alphabetical list of various keywords, specific names, etc. And when you click into them, it's going to bring up the subtopics within, in this case, accountants. And so you can just easily browse through until you find a relevant section, because remember, all of these titles are descriptive, so they're going to give you a really good idea of what that individual code section is about. And you can see it's hyperlinked. So this is the code section, so if you just click on it, it will take you into that code section. And from there, we have those annotations that we talked about in legislative history. So here we have the history tab. It's going to show us versions. It's going to have some legislative history materials related to this specific code section. And it also has a graphical statute, so it shows you the history of this code section, context and analysis. Here we have an encyclopedia listed, so that will help you understand the content of this specific code section. The one thing I want to point out with these code sections is if you need to find out when it was last put in force, this currentness statement does that for you. So it's going to tell you that it was added, this specific code section was added by this bill that was enacted, and that it's current. So here, everything in this code section is current up until July 1st, 2025. So remember that if there is something happening on this bill, like something happened after July 1st, we would likely have a signal here, a red flag or a yellow flag, telling us that there's something else going on with this specific code section. So the process in Lexis is pretty much the same. Again, we can just start typing in Texas statutes, and it's going to bring up our options here in the drop-down menu. Notice that the index is listed separately. That's just the way Lexis does it. I don't know why it does it this way. This is just the way they've always done it. So if you want to go into the index, you click on that and it'll take you into that alphabetical listing. If you want to go into the statutes, you click on that and it will take you into the statutes. And those additional legislative materials, you get to those once you're in to the specific code section. So we'll just go into this one quickly as an example. So you can see here we have the history tab. We have this one doesn't have any other citing sources, but if there were, it'd be right here. So that's where you find additional legislative information for this specific code section. There are some other things available, so let's go back. I want to go to the main Texas page again in Lexis to show you what other things are available as far as legislative types of materials. So let's go back to Texas and scroll down, and you can see here we have the bill tracking report, full text bills. This is also where you have the Constitution, etc., and then those municipal codes that we talked about. If you click on that, it's going to bring you to the list of codes that are available in Lexis. If you just go to the main page for Texas statutes and legislation, you can see here we have the bill tracking, we have the legislative history collection, state voting records, etc. Okay, so let's put some of this into action, and it will probably make more sense when we go through the in-class exercise. So what we're looking at today is a client who is seeking to terminate their lease early. The client's lease term ends at the end of June. He is taking a job in another state and would like to get out of the lease. The apartment's lock is battery operated, and residents use a fob to enter the front door. Last week, your client took his dog for a walk at 8:30 p.m. When he returned to the apartment, the fob would not open the door. The blinking light indicated that the door lock battery was dead. Your client attempted to call the leasing office several times but was not able to reach maintenance. He spent the night at a friend's house, and the apartment manager let him in the following morning. So your client wants to know if he can get out of the lease because of the dead battery on the door lock. So we're going to use O'Connor's causes of actions to find a section that would help us determine if the landlord unlawfully locked out the tenant. Okay, so we're using O'Connor's, so let's get to O'Connor's. And let's go to State Materials, and then Texas, and then Secondary Sources, and then O'Connor's, and we want to use causes of action. So let's get to that specific title. There it is. So let's click into it. And now we're in. And so I'm just going to browse through the table of contents until I find something applicable to our topic. And you can see here that we do have a landlord-tenant action. So I'm going to click on that to get into the sub table of contents for that. And you can see we have these different options, different chapters, and we do have one specific to unlawful lockout. So I'm going to click on that plus, and let's see what we have. We have different sections that looks like we're in the right place here. So I'm going to go to the introduction to get us to the very first entry on this, and it gives us just a general overview. And let's go into the next section, and let's see if it starts to give us the information that we're looking for. So question 1A, is there an applicable cause of action, and what does the tenant have to prove? And provide the citation in Connors. So just looking at this general heading here, it looks like we do have a cause of action. A suit for unlawful lockout allows a residential or commercial tenant who has been unlawfully locked out of leased property to recover damages and either recover possession of the property or cancel the lease. So this is exactly what our client wants to do. So it looks like we do have a cause of action. So what is the citation for this section? That is right here up at the top. This is the citation for this specific section that we're looking at. So we've answered question 1A. So let's look at question 2. Look under the remedies section in O'Connor's. So that would be section 3 here. So let's click into that. And the question is cancellation of the lease a remedy? Provide the citation. So it looks like in an act, blah, 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 can either choose to recover possession of the property or cancel the lease. Yes. So that does look like it's a remedy, and this would be the citation for this specific section in O'Connor's for that remedy listed there. And then for question 3, what is the statutory authority for the answer in number 2? So here we can see cancel the lease, and the citation for the statute is listed right here. Section 92.0081H1 and 93.002G1. Okay. So for question 4, your client occasionally works from home. Will this change the analysis of this, the fact that your client works from home occasionally? So let's see. I don't see anything immediately in this particular section. So let's go up a section and see if there's information related to that. So we'll go back into section 2 under elements, and we can see here that there is a note that says if leased property is used for both residential and commercial purposes, i.e. working from home, it is usually the tenant's interest to argue that she is a residential tenant. And here is the case that that analysis comes from, warehouse partners versus Gardner. So that is our answer to question 4. Okay, so let's go to our next section in our in-class exercise on legislative history. So your work on this unlawful lockout case has inspired you to write a journal article on the topic, and you'd like to have more insight into the intent of the statute. So we need to look at the underlying legislative documents to get to intent. So question 5, what is the most recent amendment for the code section you cited in question 3? Provide the citation for the session law and the bill number. So let's go back to that code section that we used to answer question 2. So let's go back to section 3 in remedies, and here in the very first paragraph, that's where we found the citation to the cancel the lease remedy, and you can see 92.0081 H1 and 93.002 G1. So we're just going to look at one of those sections, not both of them, just for time. And what we want to do, you can see this is hyperlink. So when we click on that, it's going to take us into this specific code section. And we're going to go down to the credit statement, because this is where we find out what bills produced this code section. And it's read left to right. So the very first bill listed here, that's the very first bill that created this specific code section. And we need to find the most recent amendment for this code section, and that is going to be the very last bill listed here. So this is the very last act that amended the language in this specific code section. So this is the answer to question 5, Acts of 2007, 80th Legislature, Chapter 917, Section 1, effective January 1st, 2008. So for legislative history research, having the bill number makes it much easier to find the associated legislative material. So here, this is the enacted bill citation, and it's, as you can see, not easily readable, but let's click into it. So again, this is hyperlink. So if we click into it, it's going to take us to the actual bill itself, and that is where we will more easily find the bill number. So you can see here's the bill citation, HB number 3101, and it's in the 80th Legislature of the 2007 regular session. So you always need to know what legislature the bill was passed in, because as you can imagine, there are other legislative sessions that have the same bill number because they're just numbered in order as they are introduced. Now we're ready to answer question 6. And 6 instructs us to go to the Texas Legislature online website. So let's do that. And from there, we need to find the House Committee report. So we do that again by finding all of the material related to that House bill citation that we just found. So here you can see we have this bill lookup thingy right here. So we want to go to the specific legislative session, which is 80. So regular session 2007. And we know the bill number, so let's click that, and it's bill number 3101. And as you can see, that did not work because this error message tells me I need to put the HB in front of my number. So let's do that. So every database is different. If it doesn't work, just pay attention to the errors and do what it tells you to do. Okay, so now we are in the bill record, essentially, for this specific bill right here. And what you see here down at the bottom, which is super helpful, this is basically a list of all of the actions that happened on this bill. And it tells you what that action is and what date it occurred on. So for question 6, we need to find the House Committee Report Analysis. And my initial thought is to look through this list of materials. I can see that things are hyperlinked, which tells me it probably leads to the material for that thing. And so I can look through this list and see if that House Committee Report Analysis is listed here. And I could not find it listed here. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top and I'm going to see what my other options are. And so we have these tabs listed up here. So I'm just going to start to go through these tabs to see if I can find that House Committee Report Analysis. So I'm going to click on Text here as the first tab, and let's see what we have available. Looks like we have documents listed here, and here we have the House Committee Report. So excellent. So we can open up one of these documents. So we have the bill, we have a fiscal note, and we have the analysis. So that's what I'm looking for. And to try to keep it nice and clean, I'm going to open up the PDF instead of these other options. And I'm going to right click and say Open Link in a new tab. Okay, so let's look at this document. And yep, it's a bill analysis for HB 3101, and that's exactly what we need. So let's look at question 6A. What is the purpose of this bill? And generally speaking, purpose statements are going to be at the very top of whatever document you're looking at. And you can see here it says author sponsor statement of intent. So that goes right into what we need. Apartment tenants are often vulnerable to unfair practices of some landlords who abuse their landlord-tenant relationship for monetary gain. These practices include requiring tenants to furnish additional documentation, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. So let's get into what we need. HB 3101 is a comprehensive landlord-tenant reform bill intended to ensure fair business dealings between landlord and tenants while prohibiting illegitimate and illegal practices that take advantage of vulnerable tenants. So there's our answer to question 6A. So question 6B, on what date was this bill first considered in a public hearing in the House? Well, I don't see immediately that information here, so let's go back to that outline of actions that happened. So let's go back to the History tab and let's scroll down. And it looks like the bill was filed on March 8th, read out on March 19th, referred to business and industry, so referred to committee, and then scheduled for public hearing on April 4th of 2007. So that is the first public hearing listed. So that's our answer to question 6B. And then we need to find the enrolled bill fiscal note. So let's go back up to our text tab because that's where we saw all those different documents listed. And we have the fiscal note column right here, and let's see, find the enrolled bill fiscal note. So over here we have the bill version listed. Here's the enrolled row. So let's go over and look at the fiscal note for that. I'm going to open that up in a new tab, and let's see. Oh, very nice short document, and it says no significant fiscal implication to the state is anticipated. So there's our very clear answer to question 6C. As you can see, legislative history research can be a little wonky and a little disjointed, and that's just the nature of the research. So if you ever need any help, you can always shoot me an email. Here's my email address, or you can get on our reference chat or send us an email to the reference email. All of the librarians here at the law school are more than happy to help you with this type of research. And if you have any other questions or have questions about the out-of-class assignment, please don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm always happy to help. Thanks.